The sterile white walls of Dr. Chen's clinic seemed to close in on me as my phone buzzed. Vivian's name flashed across the screen. My daughter, my only child. I answered with anticipation, but her voice carried an icy detachment I'd never heard before. Mother Dominic and I are leaving for Singapore tomorrow morning. I've sold your coastal cottage in Driftwood Cove and your sedan. We needed the capital. That's all. Click. 43 years of motherhood erased in 15 seconds. But instead of tears, a strange smile crossed my lips. There was something my dear Vivian didn't know. My name is Rosalind Whitmore. I'm 68 years old. And until that moment, I believed I understood my daughter completely. 8 months had passed since I became a widow. My husband, Theodore, collapsed during our morning routine while preparing chamomile tea. He'd kissed my forehead and whispered, "Another beautiful day with you, my Rose." Those were his final words. The paramedics said his heart simply stopped. Peaceful, they claimed, though nothing about losing him felt peaceful. Since Theodore's passing, Vivian had become surprisingly attentive. She visited 4 times weekly, helped arrange the funeral, accompanied me to the market, and insisted I schedule a complete medical examination. "Mother, you must prioritize your health now that you're alone," she'd say with that smile I mistook for love, but now recognized as calculation. The cottage had been our haven for decades. Theodore and I purchased it when Vivian turned 16, scraping together every penny through overtime shifts and sacrifices. Summer weekends were spent there, building sandcastles, celebrating milestones, hosting family gatherings. Vivian brought boyfriends, then eventually Dominic. I cooked elaborate meals, cleaned, laundered. It was our sacred tradition. Never did I imagine she'd reduce it to a monetary transaction. And the sedan, that reliable vehicle Theodore maintained religiously. Every Sunday morning, he'd wash it meticulously, change the oil precisely on schedule, park it in the same shaded spot beneath the oak tree. Vivian knew what that car represented. His scent still lingered in the upholstery, a fading connection to the man I'd loved for 4 decades. After she disconnected, I remained frozen on that uncomfortable plastic chair, surrounded by coughing patients and outdated magazines. For the first time since Theodore's death, I didn't cry. Something peculiar happened inside me, a clarity I hadn't experienced in months, because in that moment, I remembered something crucial I'd completely forgotten. 3 days before his death, Theodore handed me a brown sealed envelope. "Rosalind, place this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it when you're ready. Only when you feel strong enough." I tucked it away without much thought. After the funeral, drowning in grief and administrative chaos, I simply forgot. But it waited for me at home, patient and silent. The nurse called my name. Dr. Chen examined me thoroughly and pronounced me healthy for my age, recommending more rest and improved nutrition. I nodded mechanically, but my mind was elsewhere, fixed on that envelope, on Vivian's Arctic tone, on how Dominic probably orchestrated everything. He'd never liked me, viewing me as an inconvenience, an obstacle to their ambitions. I walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer owned a vehicle, according to Vivian, but waiting for the bus, I couldn't suppress a smile. There was something poetic about this situation. My daughter assumed she'd left me with nothing. What she didn't know was that Theodore, my brilliant Theodore, always planned ahead. The bus arrived and I claimed a window seat. I watched Millbrook pass by. The shops, the houses, people rushing through their lives, each carrying their own tragedies and secrets. I had mine too, and I was about to discover them. Arriving home, I went straight to the bedroom. I opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the brown envelope, exactly where I'd left it months ago. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel multiple documents inside. Theodore had written my name on the front in his precise handwriting. I sat on our bed, the one we'd shared for 40 years, and inhaled deeply. Dusk was settling outside, filling the house with familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, carefully, like unwrapping a precious gift. What I found inside changed everything. Legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Theodore. Tears filled my eyes as I recognized his distinctive penmanship. My dearest Rosalind, if you're reading this, I'm no longer beside you. Forgive me for keeping secrets, but I wanted to protect you from unnecessary worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just own the cottage. We have 7 other properties, including the Hawthorne residences, where Vivian and Dominic live. We also hold shares in 4 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are wealthy, my Rose. You always were rich in spirit, but now you're rich on paper, too. My hands shook as I examined the documents. Property deeds for houses throughout Riverside Heights, a penthouse in Harborview District, a small inn along the coast, and indeed, the 15-story Hawthorne residences where my daughter resided. Theodore had been the silent owner for 12 years, managing everything through a company I never knew existed. According to the papers, I was the sole heir of Whitmore Holdings Limited. Bank statements revealed accounts I'd never heard of, with balances that seemed fictional. Theodore worked as a postal supervisor for 38 years, but apparently he'd also been an extraordinarily shrewd investor. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we made, he'd multiplied in silence. I knew nothing. In his letter, Theodore explained why he'd kept it secret. He didn't want me worrying about finances, and more importantly, he didn't want Vivian knowing our true wealth. You know our daughter, Rosalind. If she knew about this money, everything would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have. The irony was devastating. Our daughter abandoned us believing we had nothing when we actually had everything. That night, sleep was impossible. I wandered through the house, touching old furniture and knickknacks Vivian always criticized as outdated. I studied family photographs on the wall, especially one where she was 6 years old, sitting on Theodore's lap, laughing with pure joy. Where did that sweet child disappear to? When did she become so cold, so calculating? What would happen when Vivian discovered the truth? And how would I use this knowledge Theodore left me? If you're enjoying Rosalind's journey of silent justice, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to stay with us till the end. Trust me, what happens next will surprise you. Early next morning, my phone rang again. Vivian. Her voice sounded different, softer, almost apologetic. But I'd learned to distrust these tonal shifts. Mother, good morning. I wanted to inform you that we've transferred the funds from the cottage and sedan sales. We deposited your portion into your account. It's modest, but it should sustain you for several months while you find something smaller. My portion? I kept my voice steady, calm. Yes, Mother. Obviously, we wouldn't leave you with nothing. We gave you 35%. That's fair, correct? We need the capital for Dominic's business opportunity in Singapore. 35% of my own possessions. How magnanimous. I see, darling. And when do you depart? This evening. Our luggage is packed. We'll be gone at least 8 months. Perhaps longer if the venture succeeds. But don't worry, Mother. When we return, we'll help you locate a small apartment. Something suitable for your needs. Suitable for my needs. As if she had any idea what I needed. Safe travels, Vivian. Oh, Mother. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so accommodating. We love you tremendously. She disconnected. I stood holding the phone, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Genuine laughter, the kind I hadn't experienced since Theodore died. The absurdity was almost comical. My daughter had robbed me, evicted me from my own property, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to finance a Singapore adventure that would likely end in disaster. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was how easily she'd discarded me. 43 years dedicated to her, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and she erased me with a 3-minute phone call. That was the real wound. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they'd deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was insulting. They'd sold the cottage for far less than its value, probably desperate for quick cash, and sold Theodore's sedan for a pittance. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Vivian and Dominic load suitcases into a taxi. He carried 2 enormous bags. She had an expensive-looking carry-on. I watched them laugh, kiss, make plans. They looked like excited teenagers embarking on an adventure. They never glanced toward my window, never said goodbye. When the taxi disappeared, I sat in the kitchen with tea and Theodore's documents spread across the table. Decisions needed to be made. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, recover everything they'd stolen. But something told me there was a better approach, a more educational one. I called Mr. Ashford, the attorney who'd handled Theodore's affairs. He'd attended the funeral, offered condolences, told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I needed him. Mrs. Whitmore, wonderful to hear from you. How are you managing? I'm well, Mr. Ashford. I need to see you urgently. I discovered some documents from Theodore that confuse me. Of course. Come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Theodore. He sat in his favorite armchair, reading the newspaper just like every morning. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my Rose. Time you stood up for yourself." I woke with this strange sensation. Not happiness exactly, but not the persistent sadness either. Something like determination. For the first time since Theodore's death, I had a clear purpose. I would reclaim what was mine, but not in the way Vivian expected. Next morning, I dressed with unusual care. I wore my navy blue dress, the one Theodore said made me look distinguished. I styled my hair and applied light makeup. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in months, a strong woman. Mr. Ashford's office was in the financial district, an elegant old building with marble floors and tall windows. He greeted me warmly, but when I showed him the documents, his expression transformed completely. Mrs. Whitmore, this is far more substantial than I imagined. Theodore was exceptionally clever. According to these papers, you own... I know, Mr. Ashford. I've reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally. Mr. Ashford explained that everything was legitimate, that the documents were valid, and I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed what I'd suspected. The cottage sale was illegal because Vivian had no authority to sell it. We can recover the cottage immediately, Mrs. Whitmore, and we can pursue legal action against your daughter for fraud. No, Mr. Ashford, I don't want legal action. I want to handle this differently. I want everything to remain confidential for now. Can you help me? He looked at me with curiosity but nodded. Of course. You're my client. What do you need? I need you to quietly recover the cottage. Do whatever's necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale, and I need you to help me gain actual control of all my properties, especially Hawthorne residences where my daughter lives. I understand. It'll take several weeks, but it's entirely feasible. Perfect. And Mr. Ashford, no one can know I'm behind this. Not yet. Leaving his office, I felt like I'd awakened from a very long dream. I walked through the financial district streets, watching people, buildings, life continuing normally. But for me, everything had shifted. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a destitute widow, abandoned by her daughter. But secretly, I was a wealthy woman silently orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Ashford worked efficiently. Every few days, he'd call with updates on legal proceedings. I decided to remain in my house temporarily. It was mine, after all, though Vivian probably expected me to move into a single room. Every morning I'd wake, breakfast at the same table where Theodore and I had shared so many years, then walk through the neighborhood. Neighbors greeted me with that mixture of pity and curiosity reserved for recent widows. Marguerite, my longtime neighbor, approached me one afternoon while I watered the front garden. "Rosalind, dear, is it true Vivian went to Singapore and left you completely alone?" "Yes, Marguerite. She and Dominic have business plans there." "And how will you manage, sweetheart?" "Everyone knows Theodore didn't leave much money." "If only you knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Marguerite. I'll manage fine." "Do you need anything? I can bring food, help with groceries." "You're very kind, but I'm managing well. Truly." These conversations repeated constantly. The grocer, the pharmacist, the corner store clerk. Everyone spoke to me in that gentle tone reserved for the unfortunate. I'd nod, smile, thank them for their concern. But inside, part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. But soon everything would change. Vivian was about to discover that her mother was not the helpless victim she believed, and the lesson was just beginning. Mr. Ashford called me on a Wednesday morning with news. "Mrs. Whitmore, excellent progress. I've successfully nullified the cottage sale. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they recovered their money without issues. The cottage is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Ashford." "And Hawthorne Residences?" "More complex. Technically, you've always been the owner through Whitmore Holdings, but we need administrative changes to give you direct control. Another 2 weeks, perhaps." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat with my tea, thinking about Vivian. She'd been in Singapore for 4 weeks without a single call, message, or postcard. To her, I'd ceased existing the moment she got the money she needed. But that was about to change. I decided to visit the cottage. I took the bus to Driftwood Cove, the same route Theodore and I had traveled hundreds of times. The cottage looked exactly as I remembered, small, cream-colored, with a porch overlooking the water. The recent occupants had placed potted plants on the steps, but otherwise everything was unchanged. I sat on the curb across the street and watched for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Vivian was young, running on the beach, building sandcastles. Theodore grilling fresh fish while I prepared salads. Vivian bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Dominic. All those joyful moments she'd reduced to a simple commercial transaction. An elderly man emerged from the cottage and noticed me sitting there. He approached with curiosity. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you." "Just remembering. I knew the previous owners." "Very well." "What a shame about what happened. They told us the elderly lady was seriously ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought we'd found a bargain, but the sale turned out to be illegal. We had to return the cottage." "Did you meet them personally?" "No. Everything went through intermediaries, but they said the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't. Such a sad situation." If only you knew how truly sad, I thought. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was how easily Vivian had lied about me. She'd invented a story about my illness, used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings. I was an obstacle to be removed. Over the next weeks, I developed an odd routine. Mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew, shopping for necessities, chatting with neighbors, maintaining appearances. Afternoons, I became a businesswoman, studying Theodore's documents, talking to Mr. Ashford, planning my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I'd need to know. I discovered Theodore had been far smarter than I'd realized. Every investment was carefully calculated. Hawthorne Residences, for example, wasn't just profitable from rent, it was in a rapidly appreciating area. I also discovered that Dominic had substantial debts. He'd taken loans using the apartment as collateral, not knowing he wasn't the actual owner. When banks discovered this, he'd face serious trouble. Mr. Ashford called me one Friday with important news. Mrs. Whitmore, we've completed all the paperwork. You now have total control of all your properties. I also recovered Theodore's sedan. The buyer was an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for small compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Ashford. Now, I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. Silence on the other end. Mrs. Whitmore, are you certain you want to do this? Completely certain. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she'll discover how important I truly am. I understand. Should I send it to Singapore? No. Give it to her when she returns. I have a feeling it'll be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Marguerite came rushing to my house with neighborhood news. Rosalind, did you hear? Dominic is in trouble with the bank. My nephew, who works there, says they're investigating loans he took using the apartment as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't his. Really? Yes, and apparently Vivian knew nothing about it. They're saying she'll have to return from Singapore to sort this mess out. What a complicated situation. Indeed. And the worst part, apparently Dominic lied about the Singapore business. There was no business. He just wanted to escape his debts here. Perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly as I'd expected. Vivian had trusted Dominic, sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering he wasn't the man she thought he was. That night I sat on the porch with tea, looking at the stars. Theodore used to say that stars were souls of people who'd lived full lives, watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, he was up there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. Thank you, my love, I whispered to the sky. Thank you for protecting me even after your death. Next day, Mr. Ashford called early. Mrs. Whitmore, news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport. Alone. Alone? Yes. Apparently Dominic stayed in Singapore. Rumors suggest they had a significant fight. I see. Did you send the letter? Sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had finally arrived. Vivian was about to discover that her mother was not the defenseless victim she believed. The game was about to change, and I held all the cards. Vivian arrived at Hawthorne Residences on Tuesday evening. I knew because Marguerite, who seemed to have informants everywhere, came to tell me the next day. Rosalind, your daughter returned last night. I saw her enter with one suitcase. She looked terrible. Pale, dark circles, as if she'd been crying the entire flight. Alone? Completely alone. And something strange, Rosalind. When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the superintendent to use the emergency copy. Interesting. Dominic had the keys, meaning he'd probably decided not to return. Or perhaps Vivian discovered something about him and fled. Either way, my daughter was back, and very soon she'd receive my little welcome gift. Mr. Ashford called that afternoon. Mrs. Whitmore, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed your daughter received it personally. Perfect. How long did we give her? 30 days to vacate the apartment, as per legal standards. Good. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake imagining Vivian's face when she read the letter. The initial confusion, then disbelief, then panic. She'd probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her. But when she called to verify, she'd discover everything was completely legal. Next morning at precisely 8 o'clock, the phone rang. Vivian. Her voice sounded desperate. Mother! Mother, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, darling. How is Singapore? Mother, I don't have time for that now. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I must vacate my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. It's called... Wait, let me find the letter. Whitmore Holdings Limited. Do you know this company? Theodore had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, darling. I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to find out. Mother, I need your help. I don't know what to do. Dominic left me in Singapore. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There was the confirmation. Dominic had abandoned her. Probably when the money ran out, or when he realized the legal problems at home were more serious than he thought. Poor Vivian. She'd sacrificed her family for a worthless man. I'm so sorry, darling. Where are you now? I'm in the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mother, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that she was left without the man for whom she'd abandoned me, she remembered she had a mother. Of course, darling. Come over whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Vivian arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see, a poor, vulnerable widow who'd been abandoned by her own daughter. Vivian arrived an hour later. Opening the door, I was shocked by how terrible she looked. She'd lost weight, had deep circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and unkempt. Her eyes were red from crying. Mother, she said, and for a moment I thought she'd hug me, but she stopped as if suddenly remembering how things had ended between us. Come in, darling. Would you like some tea? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I'd read Theodore's documents weeks ago. Vivian looked small in that chair, lost, just like when she was a child coming to tell me about school problems. Mother, I'm so sorry for how I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, darling. No, it's not. I treated you horribly. I said terrible things, and now... Her voice broke. Now I have no one. What happened with Dominic? He left with a 24-year-old hotel receptionist in Singapore. Turns out there was never any business. It was all lies. He just wanted to escape his debts here and use the money from selling your cottage to fund his adventure. All the debts? Yes, Mother. So many debts. Apparently he'd been taking loans for years, using the apartment as collateral, but now I discover he wasn't the owner. How is that possible? Here was my opportunity. I don't know, darling. Property matters are very complicated. The problem is that now banks are coming after me for his debts. They say since we were married, I'm also responsible. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mother, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. She started to cry, real tears of genuine desperation. For a moment, my maternal heart softened. I wanted to hug her, console her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called me from the clinic, the ease with which she'd discarded me, the way she'd talked to me as if I were a burden. Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter? I don't have money for a lawyer, Mother. We spent everything in Singapore. Dominic took what little was left when he ran off with that woman. So what will you do? I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find work and can get a small place to live. There was the question I'd been waiting for. After evicting me from my own house, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, she now wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she'd created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. Of course, darling. This will always be your home. Vivian looked at me with surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. Really, Mother, after everything that happened, you are my daughter, Vivian. That will never change. She stood up, and this time she hugged me. It was a desperate embrace from someone drowning and clinging to the only thing they could find. I hugged her back too, but not with the unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace. Strategy. Thank you, Mother. I promise I'll find work soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what your options are. Vivian left that afternoon to collect some things from her apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how easy it had been. She'd come to me exactly as I'd planned, broken, desperate, with no options, and best of all, she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother who needed her compassion, but this was only the first part of my plan. Having her live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. And soon, very soon, Vivian would learn the difference between being poor by circumstance and being poor by consequence. Vivian moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that remained of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she'd slept in during her teenage years, and I could see the humiliation in every movement. Mother, I found this in the apartment, she said, showing me a brown envelope. It was among Dominic's things. It has your name on it. It was another one of Theodore's envelopes. My heart accelerated, but I kept my composure. My name? How strange. Yes, look. She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written in Theodore's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I'd found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer. Maybe Dominic found it among Father's things when he died and forgot to give it to you, Vivian said. Possible? May I see it? I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small key. Rosalind, if you're reading this after receiving the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through difficult times. This key opens Safety Deposit Box 315 at the Central Bank Harborview branch. There's something there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Theodore. Vivian read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Father had a safety deposit box. I had no idea. Neither did I lied. Do you think we should go see what's inside? I don't know, darling. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are. But, Mother, maybe there's something important. Documents, or I don't know, maybe something valuable that can help us. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Vivian was clinging to any possibility of finding an escape from her situation. All right, I said after a calculated pause. We can go tomorrow. Next day, we went to the bank. Vivian was nervous, hopeful. I maintained my act as a confused widow who didn't understand much about finance. The bank employee led us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my identification, and opened box 315. Inside were jewels, many jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Theodore's family. Others were completely new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Vivian gasped. Mother, this must be worth a fortune. You think so? Yes. Look at this emerald, this pearl necklace. Mother, Father saved a treasure here. According to Theodore's letter, the jewels were worth approximately $180,000. It was significant, but nothing compared to the rest of my assets, like finding coins under the sofa when you have millions in the bank. Over the following weeks, Vivian struggled with decisions she'd never had to make before. She sold most of the jewels to pay Dominic's most urgent debts. She took a job at a local supermarket, working evening shifts. She learned to budget, to negotiate with creditors, to survive on minimum wage. It was painful to watch, but necessary. Meanwhile, Mr. Ashford had been working behind the scenes. He'd gathered evidence proving Dominic had forged Vivian's signature on loan documents. He'd prepared all the legal paperwork to free her from those debts. But I'd instructed him to wait. Vivian needed to hit rock bottom completely before I revealed the truth. 6 weeks after she moved in, I found her at the kitchen table one night, crying over unpaid bills. Mother, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Every time I pay one debt, another appears. I'm working 60 hours a week, and I'm still drowning. You're doing your best, darling. My best isn't good enough. I ruined everything. I abandoned you, sold your things, trusted a liar, and now I'm dragging you down with me. You're not dragging me down, Vivian. Yes, I am. You're eating less, so I can eat. You're wearing old clothes because you're giving me money for work clothes. You're sacrificing for me again, and I don't deserve it. For the first time since she'd returned, I heard genuine remorse in her voice, not just lamenting consequences, but true acknowledgement that she'd done something morally wrong. Vivian, I need to tell you something. What, Mother? I took a deep breath. After months of acting, I was finally going to reveal the truth. Your father left me more than you knew. Much more. What do you mean? I went to my room and returned with Theodore's original envelope. I spread the documents on the kitchen table, the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment certificates, the entire fortune Theodore had built in secret. Vivian read in silence for several minutes. Her face went through a complete range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally comprehension. Mother, this says you own Hawthorne Residences, the building where I lived. Yes. And you have other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. This means when I sold the cottage, it was always my cottage. The sale was fraudulent. I already got it back. Vivian stared at the papers. How long have you known this? Since the day you called me from the clinic. You knew all this when I came back from Singapore asking for help? Yes. You knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night? Yes. There was a long, tense silence. Why, Mother? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me? This was the question I'd been waiting for. Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. You needed to learn the value of what you'd lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me, it was dignity, it was love, it was trust. Vivian started to cry, but these weren't tears of self pity. They were tears of deep understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like you were worthless. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Ashford had also prepared documents showing that all of Dominic's debts could be legally separated from her. She was free. Mother, can you ever forgive me? I forgave you long ago, darling. The question is, can you forgive yourself? Vivian wiped her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needs her mother, but the look of a grown woman who respects another woman. I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes, Vivian. The important thing is what we do after we recognize those mistakes. We sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Vivian spoke. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you were really the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson? That there's nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. During these past weeks, the only thing that kept me going was knowing I had a home with you, that no matter how much I'd ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Vivian. I know, but I also know I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just words. 6 months later, our life had found a new balance that neither of us could have imagined before. Vivian kept her supermarket job, even after learning about our wealth. Mother, I need to finish what I started, she told me. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened. She also enrolled in social work courses at the community college, paying for them with her own savings. I want to help other women who are going through what I went through, she explained. I want to use what I learned from this experience for something meaningful. I decided to use some of our resources to establish the Whitmore Foundation, dedicated to helping women leaving situations of financial abuse and abandonment. Vivian became actively involved, using her own story to connect with the women we helped. We converted the cottage in Driftwood Cove into a temporary shelter for women rebuilding their lives. Theodore would have loved knowing his beloved cottage was serving such a purpose. One Sunday afternoon, Vivian and I sat on the porch of that cottage, watching the sunset over the water. Mother, I received a letter from Dominic yesterday, she said quietly. My muscles tensed. Dominic? He wrote to you? From where? From prison in Singapore. Apparently, he was sentenced to 18 months for fraud. In the letter, he says he regrets everything and wants to ask for my forgiveness. And how do you feel about it? Honestly, I don't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life happened decades ago, not months ago. Are you going to write back? No. Not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. That Vivian who married him no longer exists. I was impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting beside me had developed an inner strength that came from hitting rock bottom and getting up on her own. Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mother? What? That true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the one that teaches you what you need to learn even when it hurts. That night, after Vivian went to bed, I sat on the porch alone, looking at the stars, thinking about Theodore. "We did it, my love," I whispered to the night sky. "Our daughter finally understands what truly matters." And for the first time since his death, I felt him answer me in the gentle ocean breeze. "I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on a foundation that no future crisis could destroy. Did you enjoy Rosalind's story of silent strength and motherly wisdom? What would you have done in her situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring life stories. Your support helps me bring you more powerful narratives like this one. On the screen, you'll see recommendations for other compelling stories from our collection. There's so much more waiting for you on the channel. Thank you for listening with an open heart. See you in the next story. With love and respect.